Welcome to another project. In this project, we are going to create an animated search bar. As you can see from the final version of the project, we have a magnifier with a neumorphism design, and when we click on the magnifier, we see a search bar and a microphone. Also, if we click on the magnifier again, the search bar goes back to its original size. In this project, we are using the neumorphism design, and we're going to use JavaScript to add and remove classes to have different sizes for our search bar. You'll also see an animation on the microphone and the search bar when we close and open the search bar. In the next section, we're going to start with the HTML parts of the project. So, see you in the next section. All right, let's start our project. First, we open Visual Studio Code. Here we close the Get Started tab. In the File menu, we click on Open Folder. As usual, I would like to create a project on my desktop, but you can create it anywhere you like on your computer. So here we click on Desktop, and then we click on the New Folder button to create a new folder. We name the folder Animated Search Bar and press Enter. Here we click on the Select Folder button to select the folder. We close the Get Started tab again. And on the left side in the Explorer section, we right-click and click on New File. We name the file index.html, and now we have our HTML file on the right side, which is completely empty. But we can use an exclamation point and tab to create an HTML5 boilerplate. In the boilerplate, we have the doc type, which tells the browser what version of HTML the page is written in. And for HTML5, we just need to have HTML here. Then we have the HTML tag, which is the top-level element in the HTML file and includes the head and the body tag. The lang attribute inside the HTML opening tag sets the language of the page. And in our case, we set the language to be English. Then we have the head section that has the metadata tags and the title. In the first meta tag, the charset attribute defines the HTML character encoding. And UTF-8 is recommended by HTML5 for web developers because it contains nearly all the characters and symbols. Then we have the compatibility meta tag, which tells the Internet Explorer browser to use the most recent rendering engine, which is now Edge. The viewport meta tag tells the browser how to resize the page, and the first part of this meta tag sets the page's width to the device's screen. For example, a mobile screen's width will be smaller than a computer screen's width. Then we have the initial zoom level. Let's use Alt-Z to turn on word wrap so we can see all the code. So this part of the viewport meta tag sets the initial zoom level of the page, which in our case is 100%. Next, we have the title tag, which sets the title of the page. In order to see the browser inside Visual Studio Code, we can use the Live Server extension. Here, we just need to right-click. And if you have installed Live Server in your Visual Studio Code, you can see this option in the menu. So for the Live Preview shortcut, we click here, and now we can see the browser on the right side, which is completely empty. But we do have the document title, so let's change the title to be the name of our project, which is Animated Search Bar. Now you can see the change in the title of the page. Let's close this part. We don't need it for now. So we drag this divider line to the left. This way we have more space on the right side for index.html and the browser. Our search bar is going to have a magnifier and also a microphone. So in order to have these icons in our browser and on our website, I would like to use a website called Iconfinder. So we go back, head to the desktop, and click on Google Chrome. Here in the search bar, you're going to search for Iconfinder. Actually, with this search, the icons we are using are similar to the ones on this page, the microphone and also the search magnifier. So here we search for Iconfinder. In the search results, we click on the first website, iconfinder.com, and here we first search for magnifier. And here on the left side, we set the filter to free icons so we can see only the free ones. I would like to choose this one, which is very similar to the one in Google here. So we click on it, then we right-click on the image and click on Copy Image Address. Then we go back to Visual Studio Code, and in the body section, first we create a div with a class of search bar container. And inside this, we add an image tag. In the src attribute, we paste the link that we already copied. So we just use Ctrl-V to paste it. Now we can see the magnifier on the right side. In the alternative text, we just write magnifier. So just delete this magnifier. Then after the image, we have an input. We have an input with the class of input. The type is text, and we have a placeholder. We can see the input here. We have a placeholder. Let me save all the changes. We just type search and some dots, like this. After the input, we add another image for the microphone. So we add the image tag, and then we go back to the Iconfinder.com website. Here we search for mic, but specifically for the Google style one. So we just type mic Google, and for the first one that is free, we click on it. We right-click and select Copy Image Address. Then we go back to Visual Studio Code and paste the link into the src attribute using Ctrl-V. We can see it here in our HTML. And in the alt attribute, we just write mic icon. Now let's add some classes to the images as well. This way we can target them later when we do the styling. So we just add a class attribute. The first image has a class called magnifier. And for the last one, we add a class of mic icon. All right, that's it for the HTML part of the project. In the next section, we're going to start styling our project using CSS. So, see you in the next section. All right, in the last section, we finished the HTML part of our project. We brought in two icons from iconsfinder.com, and we added an input with the placeholder search. In this section, we're going to add the styling for our project using CSS. First, we need to create a CSS file. So here we open the Explorer section using Ctrl-Shift-E, and in the Explorer section, we right-click and select New File. We name the file style.css and press Enter. Before using CSS in our project, we must add a link to the CSS file within the HTML code. So now we go back to the index.html file, and just under the title tag, we add a link tag. We just type link and click on the third auto-suggestion, the one for CSS. Now we have a link tag that creates the relationship between the HTML file and the external style sheets. The href attribute defines the destination of the link, and as both files index.html and stolid.css are located in the same directory, we just need to use stolid.css for the URL. Now we can start styling our project using CSS. We save this file using Ctrl-S, then close the Explorer section by dragging this line to the left to have more space on the right side, and then we go to the stolid.css file. First, I would like to decrease the size of these icons so we have a better view of our projects and can showcase them more easily afterward. To do that, we'll work with the two classes we created. We have two images with two classes, the class of magnifier and the class of mic icon. So we target these two classes using .magnifier, and we set the width to be 25 pixels. You can see the change here. And then we use .mic icon to style the microphone icon, and we set its width to be 30 pixels. All right, let's continue. Now we can more easily style our project. So before doing anything else, we style the body section to bring the items to the center, adjust the positioning, and also change the background color. First, we remove the space around the body elements, the default margin by using margin 0. Then we can set display flex. That lets us bring the items to the center horizontally using justify content center. And we can use height 100 VH to set the height of the body to the full screen size. Then we can use align items center to bring the items to the center vertically. After that, we change the background color to Alice Blue. That way we get a slightly bluish color very close to white, but with a soft blue tint. With this background, we can apply the Neumorphism design much more effectively. In order to have the Neumorphism design in our project, we need a color that's not pure white. We need something slightly different from white. Because if you use pure white, you can't see the top shadow, which is also white, and then this design won't work. All right, now let's add the container, style that container, and add the box shadow to create the Neumorphism design. So we're going to target this div with a class of search bar container. We'll copy this class name, go to our style sheet, and start styling it. We just need to change the display to flex so we can bring the items into the same row and use align items center. So first, we change the display to flex, then we use align items center to keep them nicely aligned in the same row. Next, we change the background color to match the body, which is Alice Blue. Then we add padding of 5 pixels. And let's add the box shadow first so you can see how the effect looks. For a proper Neumorphism design, we'll use 2 shadows. The first shadow is underneath the container. That one is the darker shadow. And we have another shadow on the top of the container, which is the lighter white shadow. For the first one, the horizontal shadow offset is 6 pixels, and the vertical shadow offset is also 6 pixels. Here we can see this is the vertical shadow. This one is the horizontal shadow, 6 pixels, and then we have 10 pixels of blur radius. You can see the shadow now. We also want the shadow to be slightly transparent. So we use the color black 000 with 20% transparency. All right, we can use Alt-Z to turn on word wrap. That way, we can see the shadow more clearly. Let's add some border radius as well. First, we set the width to 300 pixels. Then we change the height to 50 pixels. Next, we add a border radius to give it rounded corners. I want the corners to be completely rounded. So we set the border radius to be the same value as the height. So in this case, it's 50 pixels. Now let's add another box shadow, which is white and positioned on the top left. The previous one was on the bottom right because we used positive values of 6 pixels and 6 pixels, which move the shadow to the right and down. For this next shadow, which is white, we use a negative value of 6 pixels. We also use another negative 6 pixels for the top, so we can see 6 pixels on the top and left with a 10 pixel blur. And we don't want this shadow to be black. We want it to be white instead. So we use the RGBA function to create a white color. The white color values are 255, 255, and 255. But for this one, we want it to have 70% transparency. Now we have the neumorphism design applied to our bar. Set the transparency to 70%. This completes the exact look of our bar. You just need 2 shadows, one black shadow on the bottom right and one white shadow on the top left. All right, now let's add some margin. It's just a 10 pixel margin. This way, when we have a smaller screen, we still have some space around the bar and the content next to it. Next, let's continue by styling the magnifier icon. We simply change the cursor to be a pointer. So when we hover over it, we'll see the pointing hand cursor. And let's position this element as absolute to move it a little bit to the right side. So we position it as absolute, and we just set left to 20 pixels. But this actually gives it 20 pixels from the screen edge. We wanted to have 20 pixels of space inside the bar, so we need to change the position of the parent, which is the search bar container, to relative. Now the magnifier is positioned correctly here. The parent is the search bar container, which is this bar here. Now let's position this microphone on the right side as well. So we just say position absolute, and we want it to be positioned on the right side 20 pixels from the edge. or just 10 pixels is enough, I believe. And let's style this input as well. So we target the input using its class, which is input. So we target it here by just using the class name input. We change the background color to be transparent, so we no longer have any background color. And next, we remove the border. We do that using border, none, and we change the margin to be 10 pixels on the top and bottom and 50 pixels on the left and right. So this positions it nicely in the middle. Now let's also remove this orange outline. We want to create a design similar to Google, so we're removing this outline, but actually it's recommended to keep the outline for a real website. If you have a real website you're designing and you want your users to actually use your website, never remove the outline because it's recommended for people with disabilities so they can use your website as well. But for this project only, we remove the outline to have a nicer looking website. All right, and the color is fine, but I would like to slightly reduce the intensity of the text color. So we just set the color. We use the RGB function with 100, 100, and 100, which gives us a dark gray color. All right, so now we want to add some functionality. When we click on this magnifier, it should expand, and when it's not active, we want to have a smaller icon. So in order to do that, we need to add a class, and we need to apply that class in our website here. For example, we add a class of active, and when the active class is added, we want to have a smaller bar. So we say that when active is there, we want the size of this search bar, instead of being 300, to be only 50 pixels. So we just say that if active exists, the search bar container has a width of 50 pixels. We just need to remove this space here. But when we actually make it 50 pixels wide, we still have the search input and also the microphone. So we want to hide the microphone and the search input as well. So we just say, if the active class exists, we want this input to be invisible. We can just set visibility to none, or we can just change the width to be 0. And for the microphone as well, we just target it with .mic icon. We want to change its width to be 0. So later we're going to add a transition to the width of the microphone. And the search bar is going to increase and decrease with the animation as well. So yeah, that's it for the CSS part of our project. In the next section, we're going to add functionality to our project using JavaScript. So see you in the next section. All right, in the last section, we finished the CSS part of our project. We added a class named active to our search bar container, and when we add it, we get a circle. And when we remove it, we have a big bar. That bigger bar includes the search input and the microphone. But when we have this active class, we don't see the microphone or the search bar, and the width of the search bar container is only 50 pixels. Now, let's remove this active class. And we're going to use JavaScript to add and remove this class using the toggle method. And we're also going to add some animation. So we're going to have a smaller and a bigger bar and a smooth transition between these two sizes. First, we create a JavaScript file to get started. We open the Explorer section using Ctrl-Shift-E. In the Explorer section, we right-click and select New File. We name the file index. Then we press Enter and drag it to this part of the Explorer. Before we can use this JavaScript file in our project, we need to link it inside our HTML code. So we go back to index.html and scroll down. And here, at the end of the body tag, we add a script tag. We just write SC and click on the second auto suggestion, the one with the src attribute. As both files, index.html and index.js, are located in the same directory, for the src attribute, we just need to use index.js. Now we can use JavaScript for our project. Now we can close the Explorer section to have more space for the coding area. We also make the browser a bit smaller, and then we go to index.js to start adding functionality to our project. First, we need to reference this magnifier element in our JavaScript. We want to handle the click events on this icon. So to access this element, we need to use a selector method, because this image has the class of magnifier. To return an element by its class, we can use the querySelector method. Here we create a constant, call it search bar container element, and set it equal to document.querySelector. And this selector will target the search bar container. I'm always making this little mistake. So search bar container. All right, let's focus on what we actually need to do here. Next, we add an addEventListener method to this element, and the event we want to listen for is click. So we're handling the click on this element. If someone clicks on this icon, we want to trigger a function which we'll define here. What we want this function to do is add and remove the active class. Actually, we don't need to add the event-listener method to this element. We need to add it to the magnifier, and the magnifier has the class of magnifier. I don't know why I first brought this one up. So we need to bring in the magnifier element instead. So we just say const magnifier element. We use document.querySelector, and the class is .magnifier. Now we need to add an event listener to this element, so we just write magnifier element.addEventListener.click, because we want to handle the click on this icon. We want to add or remove the active class on this element, which is the parent search bar container. So we just write search bar container.classList, and we want to toggle the active class. Now let's try this out by clicking on the magnifier icon. As you can see, we successfully added the active class. Now let's add a transition to smooth out that change. This way we'll have animations instead of a sudden change in width and a sudden removal of the microphone and the search bar. So in the CSS, first we add a transition to the search bar container. For the width, because it changes from 300 pixels to 50 pixels, we add a transition on the width. And we want the transition to last 1.5 seconds. Let's try it, and we can see the movement now. But the microphone is still changing and appearing suddenly. So we want to add a transition to the microphone and the search bar as well. So we go to the microphone and add a transition on the width as well, because we are changing the width from 30 pixels to 0 pixels. So we set a width transition, and we want it to be a little bit less than 1.5 seconds. So we set it to 0.4 seconds, and we can see that it's appearing with a transition now. But I also want to add a delay. So when the transition of this bar finishes, I want this one to appear and disappear at the end as well. So we just add a transition delay. We add a 1 second delay. Now we can see that the microphone disappears after a 1 second delay and appears with the delay as well. Let's add the same settings to the search input as well. So we can copy this and add it to the input section as well. Then we try it out. We still need to set the input width when it becomes active to 0. We haven't added a width to the input yet, so we'll just set the width to 100%. So now we can try it again. We can see that this is a little bit fast. So we'll change it and set the duration to 1 second. All right, let's continue from where we left off. And for the delay, just reduce it a bit. So maybe set it to about ½ second. This one looks better now. You can play with these numbers and find what works best for your project. So that was it for this project. I hope you enjoyed it and learned many new things. We have practiced neumorphism design, worked with transitions, and also removed and added classes using JavaScript. We also learned how to add icons from Iconfinder. And before I forget, we should add the class of active here as a default. That way, when someone comes to our website, they see only a circle, and when they click on the magnifier, they see the full-size search bar. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I'll see you in the next one.